Hey everybody, and welcome to the third edition of the Aaron and Harry Show. This is probably going to be an extra long edition. Depends on how fast we move through some of this stuff. But first we wanted to talk about headlines. First headline is that Shinseki was named by Obama to be head of the VA. This is probably the first really good decision Obama has made as interim, whereas, president-elect. He's not the president yet, but I'm pretty happy about this.
Yes, yeah, and it's also of course we always like direct insults to the previous administration, because he was the guy that told them that they didn't have enough troops to go in there.
Yeah, if you don't remember who Shinseki was, he was the guy who right before we went in was like, look, you guys are nuts, you have to have way more troops to maintain an occupation, and because he said this, he was fired. So this is him, getting his just desserts, and it is insulting to the previous administration. Excuse me. I wanted to say, though, that I feel like it's important anyway, but it's especially important, I think, that we take care of the vets coming back from Iraq. And the progressive movement should be concerned with this because of what happened after the Vietnam War. There was really a big cultural divide between the anti-war movement and the vets, and that's a shame. And I think that this time around we need to make an effort to say that a big part of the anti-war movement needs to be taking care of the vets once they come home. And to that end, I'm very happy that Shinseki is going to be the guy in charge of that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're probably going to still keep making vets. It looks like they might be moving mostly out of Iraq, but they've got that other war. So
right. Speaking of Iraq, some other good news is that they finally indicted some people from Blackwater in the Nicer Square massacre. They indicted 5. There was a 6th participant, but he he's going through the system differently because he's being used as a witness. So these guys were Blackwater employees, former military personnel of the United States. It is believed that this might spur on the invocation of the Military Extraterritorial Jurisdiction Act, which would mean that contractors and military personnel who break the law in Iraq could be tried in the United States, which is what's happening in the case of these guys.
I don't understand why anyone would be opposed to that. I mean, do you really want to be tried in Iraq?
Yeah, like if those are your two options, I think I would prefer to be tried in the United States. But so anyway, that's really awesome that they're moving forward on that. That is one step in the right direction in terms of accountability. But there's a lot more work to be done when it comes to that. So I'm hoping that legislation actually does pass. So we wanted to do a little bit more about the auto bailout. Ford came back and said they didn't want any money, which I think goes to say that they ended up not needing it. If they didn't need it, they should have not asked for it in the first place. But do you know the figures on how much they're giving the other two?
It's a surprisingly small amount. They were talking about a total of $14 billion for the entire industry, which that's almost like what you'd do to just keep them going until maybe you could renegotiate the deal, under the next administration, in a few months.
This bill that's come up for the auto bailout, though, might not pass because there's talk of a Republican filibuster, actually led by Vitter, which is interesting. Vitter of the sex scandal of last year, the heterosexual prostitute scandal. So he didn't get hit nearly as hard as Larry Craig did because, of course, he had a gay scandal. So.
Yeah, there are only 2 jobs left in America where you can't be gay: Republican politician and military.
Right. And we know how strict they are on both of those. So, anyway, all these problems with the auto bailout stem back to the financial bailout and the fact that it's completely unstructured. So, instead of the financial institutions actually extending credit so that people could buy cars, or that the suppliers for these organizations would be able to function, or even just extending loans to the corporations themselves. Instead of doing that, they're buying banks. So, the problem with the autos begs the question, why aren't the financial institutions extending credit? They should be extending credit, and I think that we should be working hard to figure out why they're not doing it.
Yeah, and again, that this shows the weakness of a lot of these bailout approaches is that they have this idea of trying to impose conditions, but the government shouldn't actually be telling people what to do with taxpayer money. So that they have all of these problems. Like, for instance, with the auto company bailout, it would probably actually be cheaper to buy the companies. Then you wouldn't have trouble imposing conditions.
But the reasons they don't want to do that is because they don't want to do anything that is similar to socialism, which of course is absurd.
Yeah, I don't get it. It's not like socialism is some sort of external threat run from Moscow that they need to defend against.
So our next headline is update on the Mumbai stuff. There have been a lot of people taken into custody and questioned in Pakistan. A lot of them are still being held. The big news with that is, though, that Pakistan wants to keep all the suspects and try them there. They don't want to give them to India. And of course, there's no extradition treaty between the two countries. And also, the ISI chief was sent for but did not go, and I wouldn't have gone either if I were him, because I would be concerned that I wasn't going to make it back home.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm proponent of negotiation, but there sometimes are times where you don't know if the envoys are going to go back.
Well, anyway, so the thing is, Zardari was in India trying to negotiate a non-first nuclear strike treaty before the Mumbai thing happened, and I think that even if they can keep from, going to war over this, if Pakistan doesn't give them the suspects, I don't see India wanting to sign that treaty.
Yeah, and there's also been talk of other moves with making it easier to travel between India and Pakistan and having more trade, and that also would probably be on hold.
Right. We have a viewer that's talking about how, well, it is, that's the big question, is how rogue is Lashkar-e-Taiba at this point. They were made illegal in 2004 by Musharraf, but they were started by ISI, and they just changed their name and they continue to operate. So that is a big question. Alpha, you should be seeing the broadcast at this point, I think. Maybe you should refresh, though. Anyway, so I think that we still have 2 more minutes for the congressional update. Do you want to do a congressional wrap-up?
Yeah, just we actually have more or less final results for the U.S. Congressional elections. It's been 5 weeks since then. But
still waiting on Minnesota.
Yeah, that one's so close. They should just flip a coin. It's and
of course Nate Silver predicts it'll come down to 27 votes. But
that we know that the Democrats picked up 7 or 8 Senate seats depending on the outcome in Minnesota, and those were a seat in New Hampshire vacated by John Sununu. A seat in Virginia that was open, a seat in North Carolina vacated by Elizabeth Dole. Yay!
There is no God.
There's let's see, there's the Norm Coleman seat, and then there were 4 seats in western states, which was New Mexico and Colorado, which have been taken by two Udalls who I thought were brothers, but it turns out are cousins. One in Oregon, vacated by Gordon Smith, and of course in Alaska, Ted Stevens lost his seat.
Right.
And in an election surprisingly close for one with a convicted felon in it. And,
it was kind of shockingly close, and the thing is, the polling results do not indicate what actually ended up happening.
And that means it's a really Republican state, because that in New Orleans, the local member of Congress who was a Democrat was indicted, and that he's running as a Democrat in New Orleans and lost.
Right.
That it was a very bad year for the indicted or convicted candidates.
Okay, that's the end of headlines.